welcome back, everyone, to the Wedge 52 Gridiron Podcast. I'm your host, Wedge. Today's episode is the Around the League Week 3 recap. In today's episode, we will be covering a recap and my thoughts on every single Week 3 game, as well as taking a quick look at the top threes in some of the major stat categories after Week 3. Then we'll get into the him performance of the week, and then a very quick preview of Week 4 matchups. Those are just going to be a quick preview, my quick initial thoughts off the top of my head, as well as my Week 4 picks. Before we jump in today, as always, thank you for listening. Please press that follow button right here on Spotify. Continue to listen, continue to help me grow, as well as check out the Instagram at Wedge52Gridiron. With all of that being said, let's jump into the Around the League Week 3 recap. Starting off with the Thursday night football game from last week. The Giants lost to the 49ers 30-12. Daniel Jones went 22 for 32, 139 yards, no touchdowns, and one interception. Brock Purdy looked very, very good, going 25 for 37, 310 yards, two touchdowns, and no interceptions against that Giants defense, who, quite frankly, has been struggling so far, this season, allowing 40 to the Dallas Cowboys in that opener for them, as well as 28 to the Cardinals, which isn't 40, but it's certainly not ideal. And that time, the defense stepped up in the fourth quarter of that game, but were very lackluster throughout the first three, and then now allowing 30 points again to the 49ers. But Brock Purdy definitely looked good. Also, Christian McCaffrey had 18 carries for 85 yards and a touchdown on the ground, as well as 5 receptions for 34 yards. Deebo Samuel had probably his best game of the season, I would say, with 6 receptions and 129 yards and a touchdown, as well as a couple of rushes. And then George Kittle had 7 receptions for 90 yards. That one, the Niners taking it to the Giants. This one did not really come as a shocker, in the Thursday night football slate. Moving on to the Falcons and Lions. The Lions took care of business 20-6 at home in Detroit for that matchup. Desmond Ridder went 21 for 38, 201 yards, and no touchdowns and no interceptions. Bijan Robinson had his first game where, he struggled, let's say. He had 10 carries for just 33 yards, no touchdowns, as well as 4 receptions for 27 yards and no touchdowns. So just 60 yards on the day out of 14 touches for Bijan. While not awful by any standards, it definitely did not continue on that upward trend statistically there for Bijan Robinson that we've seen the past few weeks. I do still think that he's going to be very good in the league. We've all seen his moves by now. So, this is kind of his first setback on his, progression up to, whatever his top level is going to be. So it'll be nice to see how the rookie, handles that mentally and how he, comes out week 4 for those Atlanta Falcons. On the defensive side of the ball for the Atlanta Falcons, Jesse Bates continued to be all over the field. He had 11 tackles, 1 interception. I believe he had 2 tackles for a loss. I didn't write it down, but I did see the statistics somewhere. So a big game by him on that Falcons defense, although he did not get much help from his teammates. On the Lions side of the ball, Jared Goff went 22 for 33, 243 yards, a touchdown, and an interception. Rookie running back Jahmyr Gibbs playing without David Montgomery this week. He had 17 rushes for 80 yards. And then Amon-Ra St. Brown continued to produce with 9 receptions for 102 yards, as well as, along with Gibbs, it was just a good day for the Lions rookies all around. Obviously, Gibbs, had the 80 yards. Tight end Sam Laporta had 8 receptions for 84 yards and 1 touchdown. Kind of an interesting stat I thought for the Detroit Lions is only 4 people caught a pass on Sunday against Atlanta. It was Amon-Ra, Sam Laporta, Cleve Raymond, and Gibbs. Jahmyr Gibbs had a couple of receptions there as well. So only 4 people to catch a pass for the Lions. I thought that was a little interesting. So just something to note. And then defensive rookie Brian Branch had 11 tackles on Sunday against those Atlanta Falcons. And then star defensive end Aiden Hutchinson had his best game of the season so far, statistically wise, with 4 tackles, 2 sacks, as well as a forced fumble and fumble recovery there. That Detroit Lions defense was all over Desmond Ridder and that Atlanta Falcons offense. They totaled 7 sacks on the day. Moving to the Colts versus Ravens game. Disappointing loss for my Ravens there. They lost 22-19 in overtime. The Ravens had plenty of opportunities to win that game, and there was a couple of missed flags towards the end. But regardless, the Ravens had plenty of positions, opportunities to win that one. Minshew went 27 for 44, 227, 1 touchdown, no interceptions. Running back Zach Moss for the Colts had 30 carries for 122 yards, and wide receiver Michael Pittman had 9 receptions for 77 yards. Zaire Franklin, just like I said in my Ravens episode last week, that he was going to be all over the field. He had 15 tackles and 1 sack. As for the Ravens, Lamar Jackson had 303 yards and 2 touchdowns total, rushing and passing. And then Kyle Hamilton had himself a breakout game at that safety position with 9 tackles and 3 sacks. If you want to learn more, a deep dive into that Ravens versus Colts game, if you are a Ravens fan, go Ravens. Or if you're a Colts fan or just a diehard NFL fan, please listen to yesterday's episode where I dive fully into that Ravens and Colts game with a full breakdown and go into much more detail than I just did here. Moving on to the Chargers and the Vikings. This one was a matchup between 2 teams who were 0-2. Did not play awful, really, in either of their losses or either of any of the 4 losses there out of the 2 of them. Did not play horrible, but did not get the job done yet this season. So I knew it was going to be a close game. We knew, there was lots of potential to be a good game. And that's what it turned out to be. The Chargers came out on top 28-24. Justin Herbert was 40 for 47, 405 yards, 3 touchdowns, and no interceptions. While wide receiver Keenan Allen for those Chargers had 18 catches for 215 yards. Did not find the end zone receiving, but went 1 for 1 as a passer with a 49-yard touchdown pass for Keenan Allen. I believe that was to Mike Williams. I could be wrong there, but I'm pretty sure that was to Mike Williams, who was 7 receptions for 121 yards and a touchdown, but did unfortunately tear his ACL later in that game and is done for the season. That is very disappointing news for the LA Chargers. Their wide receiver room can just not, get good luck staying healthy the past couple of years. That's part of the reason why they drafted receiver Quentin Johnson so early, because they knew they were struggling with that. So it's going to be Quentin Johnson is hopefully, is going to live up to what they saw in him to kind of help replace or fill that spot of Mike Williams, who is going to be kind of critical that Quentin Johnson can continue that passing production for the Justin Herbert and that Chargers offense, as the LA Chargers only had 30 yards rushing on Sunday against Minnesota. That number is, horrible. You cannot have an offense that is that far one-sided throughout the season. Otherwise, teams are just going to be able to completely corner you and force your hand which, kind of really opens up their playbook in terms of being able to study the opposing offense and, create a better and more functional game plan when an offense is so severely one-sided. So Chargers definitely need to reestablish part of that rushing game. That will come with Austin Eckler as soon as he is healthy enough to get back in the lineup for them. On the Vikings side of the ball, Kirk Cousins went 32 for 50, 367 yards, 3 touchdowns, and 1 interception. Running back Alexander Mattison finally did something noteworthy with 20 carries for 93 yards. No touchdowns, but 93 yards, I think, maybe more than he's had in the previous 2 weeks combined. They did trade for Cam Akers. I do not believe he suited up for that game. He did not have a touch, so that gives me reason to believe he did not suit up. That trade came, late in the week, Wednesday, Thursday, I want to say, of last week. And then wide receiver Justin Jefferson, seven receptions for 149 yards and a touchdown. He finally found the end zone, and we got to see the first, Justin Jefferson gritty of this season. Moving on to that Bills and Commanders game, the Bills took care of business handedly, 37-3. Josh Allen went 20 for 32, 218 yards, 1 touchdown, and 1 interception. Running back for the Buffalo Bills, James Cook had 15 carries for 98 yards, no touchdowns. Josh Allen also, on the ground had 3 carries for 46 yards and a touchdown. And then wide receiver Stephon Diggs had 8 receptions for 111 yards. That Bills defense absolutely, devastated the Washington Commanders offense, who is by no means, a horrible or bad offensive unit. I would consider the Commanders offense, just off the top of my head here, to be a mid-level offense, somewhere in the middle of the pack in terms of weapons and potential with all of that. But that Bills defense had 9 sacks on quarterback Sam Howell, who struggled, as well as the Buffalo Bills had 4 interceptions on Sunday in Washington. Sam Howell went 19 for 29, 170 yards, no touchdowns, obviously, with only 3 points scored, and those 4 interceptions. It was a rough day for the Commanders there. And interesting to see if this Bills defense is something, noteworthy in terms of them being able to be somewhere consistent. Obviously, they're not going to get 9 sacks and 4 interceptions every single week. But it's definitely going to, be interesting to see how that Bills defense performs against some of the more strong, fire-powering offenses like the Miami Dolphins, who they play in Week 4. We'll talk a little bit more about that in a little bit here, so make sure you stay tuned and continue listening. The Saints versus the Packers. The Packers came ahead 18-17. The Packers scored all 18 of their points in the last 11 minutes and 4 seconds of the game. They did not score up to that point, and they came back and completed the victory against the New Orleans Saints. Quarterback Derek Carr did go down with an injury. The shoulder injury is not expected to be long-term, is the reports that I'm seeing so far from the Saints. It looks like an AC joint sprain so far for Derek Carr. And I think he's considered week to week. The other quarterback would be Jameis Winston, who filled in the remainder of the game against the Packers. And he is a viable quarterback 2 option for them. Wide receiver Chris Olave was kind of only the high point for that Saints offense, with 8 receptions and 104 yards, with a very nice one-handed grab included in those 104 yards. On the Packers side of the ball, Jordan Love only 50% completion, going 22 for 44, 259 yards, 1 touchdown, and 1 interception, as well as 9 carries for 39 yards and 1 touchdown on the ground. Wide receiver Romeo Dobbs. I've heard people say it both ways. Romeo, if you're listening to this, hit me up. We're going to figure out how to pronounce your name the correct way. He had another game having himself a solid little season so far. He had 5 receptions for 73 yards and a touchdown. And defensive edge for the Green Bay Packers, Rashawn Gary, had 3 tackles and 3 sacks on the day. The Titans versus Browns. The Browns came ahead of the Titans 27-3. The Titans seem to be flip-flop every single week in terms of what you're getting from them. And kind of, to be honest, the Browns, not as extreme, but the Browns as well. Tannehill kind of went back to his week 1 performance. He had 13 for 25, 104 yards, 0 touchdowns, 0 interceptions. Derrick Henry, surprisingly, figure here, 11 carries for only 20 yards. Is very uncharacteristic of Derrick Henry, in just being a complete bruiser, to not get more than 20 yards on 11 carries. That Tennessee Titans offense was completely shut down by the Browns, only putting up 94 total yards on the day. So that's, just an embarrassing performance by the Tennessee Titans. If they don't figure things out, have some sort of offensive success here, Ryan Tannehill, like I've mentioned, like I've talked about in my 10-minute report of the Titans, as well as, in the recent around the league recap episodes, Tannehill's job may be coming to an end here. They have Malik Willis, they have Will Levis, so definitely, just kind of waiting at this point to see how that unfolds there in Tennessee. For the Browns, Deshaun Watson went 27 for 33, 289 yards, 2 touchdowns, and no picks. Not outstanding numbers, very good efficiency, 27 for 33. Not outstanding numbers, but definitely better than his previous week's performance on Monday night against those Pittsburgh Steelers. So it's going to be interesting to see what Deshaun Watson, to where he can find consistency in his production throughout the rest of the year, and kind of what that will look like for him and those Browns. Amari Cooper had 7 receptions for 116 yards and a touchdown. And Myles Garrett, that defensive end position, we all know who he is, had 5 tackles and 3.5 sacks. A great day from Myles Garrett. Now down to Jacksonville for the Texans at Jaguars game. This one was a major upset, in my opinion. I didn't see this one coming. The Jaguars lost 37-17. It wasn't even the fact, I picked the Jaguars. I'm sure many people did. If you would have told me the Jaguars were going to lose by, a field goal or maybe, a 1-possession game, that would have been much more believable. But a 3-score game by the Texans, hats off to them. Hats off to rookie quarterback C.J. Stroud. He played very well. He went 20 for 30, 280 yards, 2 touchdowns, and no picks. He's turning out to be, at least so far statistically, and even just like in terms of, what he's able to do with what's around him. C.J. Stroud's looking like the best quarterback out of the gate for the rookie class. And he had some help from 5th round, maybe a little sooner than that. But wide receiver Tank Dell from this year's draft as well had 5 receptions for 145 yards and a touchdown. Jaguars quarterback Trevor Lawrence went 27 for 40, 279 yards, 1 touchdown, and 1 interception. That Patriots at Jets is the next game that we had. Patriots were able to beat the Zach Wilson-led Jets 15-10. The Jets, I think, are going to have to start weighing their options here for a different quarterback if they want to compete, especially in that AFC conference. Wilson went 18 for 36, 157 yards, no touchdowns, no picks. Robert Saleh already announced to the media that Zach Wilson will be the starter for Week 4. But the QB situation, in terms of acquiring a different quarterback, he kind of deflected those questions and said that is going to be up to Joe Douglas and what the Jets organization decides to do with that. Breece Hall, after his Twitter comments or X comments after the last game, where I believe he had 4 carries for 9 yards, followed up with 12 carries for 18 yards. Definitely, tripled his carries to double his yards and had 18 yards. I don't think that was their issue. The Jets, I think one of their major issues was going 2 for 14 on third down conversions. You're not going to win very many ball games if you cannot, continue to keep a drive moving, and continue to turn the ball over on downs, and punt the football away to the opposing team. The Jets defense only allowed 15 points, and there was still did not come close even in terms of feel for the Jets to be in a position to win that game. Mac Jones for the Patriots, though, did go 15 for 29, 201 yards, 1 touchdown, and 0 interceptions. Newly acquired running back Ezekiel Elliott had himself kind of a revamp or coming back party with 16 carries for 80 yards. And then tight end for them, Pharaoh Brown, had nice 2 receptions for 71 yards and a touchdown. And then former Raven, edge rusher Matthew Judon, had 4 tackles and 2 sacks on that New York Jets offense and offensive line on Sunday. Now moving on to the Broncos and the Dolphins. The Dolphins won that game in Miami, 70-20. Yes, folks, you heard that correctly. The Miami Dolphins scored 70 points in an NFL game. That is absolutely crazy. I didn't believe it when I saw it. I thought the alert was a typo. That was crazy to see. There's obviously a few players that put up ridiculous numbers for the Miami team. I am disappointed that they did not go for the record, which is the all-time record is 73 points, as they had 70 with just about 8 minutes left. They got one drive after, getting it to 70. I personally would have liked to see them get to that record, break the record if they could. That's a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for that entire coaching staff, players, equipment staff, training staff, and all the employees of the Miami Dolphins. We're not going to see that most likely again for a long time. For the Broncos, Russell Wilson, he looked all right, 23 for 38, 306 yards, a touchdown, 1 pick. Not horrible. Definitely this one's not on Russell Wilson. It's more on that defense relying 10 touchdowns to the Miami Dolphins, putting up Madden numbers. Wide receiver for the Broncos, Cortland Sutton, had 8 catches for 91 yards and 2 touchdowns, as well as 2 fumbles lost. So he scored 2 touchdowns and, basically negated 2 of them by turning the ball over and giving the Dolphins another possession on a day when, they could not be stopped. And the Miami Dolphins did all of this without wide receiver Jalen Waddle, who was out for the game with a concussion. Quarterback Tua Tagovailoa went 23 for 26, 309 yards, 4 touchdowns, and no interceptions. Running back, who I'm going to try and pronounce your name correctly, Devon Achane, 18 carries, 203 yards, and 2 touchdowns rushing, as well as 4 catches for 30 yards and 2 touchdowns through the air. A total of 233 yards and 4 touchdowns for Devon Achane. Absolutely incredible. And also running back for the Miami Dolphins, Raheem Mostert, 13 carries for 82 yards, 3 touchdowns, 7 catches for 60 yards and a touchdown. Absolutely insane numbers from that duo of Miami Dolphins running backs, as well as, Tyreek Hill, 9 catches for 157 yards and 1 touchdown. He obviously had to get in on the scoring if the Miami Dolphins are putting up 70. The Miami Dolphins offense is starting to look real scary. If they can maintain the level of play that they've been at, it's going to be tough for any defense to kind of slow them down. They're going to have a test this week against the Buffalo Bills, who are coming off a outstanding defensive performance against the Commanders. But the Miami Dolphins offense is not the same as that Commanders offense. Moving on to the Panthers and the Seahawks. The Seahawks took care of business at home, winning 37-27. Andy Dalton was filling in for quarterback Bryce Young, who was unable to go with a sprained ankle, I believe. He's expected to miss 1 to 3 weeks, so we'll see if he's able to return for those Panthers. But Andy Dalton went 34 for 58. 58 pass attempts is quite a lot. He had 361 yards, 2 touchdowns, and no interceptions. So to be honest, a solid performance from Dalton, which doesn't come as a surprise. He's been in the league a long time. Adam Thielen for the Panthers had 11 catches for 145 yards and a touchdown, as well as wide receiver DJ Chark had 4 receptions for 86 yards and a touchdown. On the Seattle side of the ball, Geno Smith had 23 for 36, 296 yards, a touchdown, and 1 pick. Wide receiver DK Metcalf continued to put up yards with 112 on 6 receptions, and running back Kenneth Walker has continued looking as good as he has been looking since last year, his rookie year. 18 carries for 97 yards and 2 touchdowns, as well as 3 receptions for 59 yards for Kenneth Walker against those Carolina Panthers. Now moving on to this Cowboys and Cardinals. Cardinals with perhaps the biggest upset of the week. I would definitely say so. Beating the Cowboys 28-16. Dak Prescott was 25 for 40, 249 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 pick. Tony Pollard, 23 carries for 122 yards. But the talk of the day is on that Arizona Cardinals team. A big upset. They were getting a lot of chunk plays, which is surprising from the going against that Dallas defense, who up to this point, prior to this game, had looked good and were most likely in that top 2, top 3 defensive ranks. Other than maybe the Browns, I'm thinking the Dallas Cowboys potentially were in that second-ranked defense. But not this week. Quarterback Josh Dobbs, 17 for 21, 189 yards, a touchdown, and no picks. Running back James Conner had himself a nice game, 14 carries for 98 yards and a touchdown, as well as 2 receptions for 18 yards. Marquise Hollywood Brown, 5 receptions for 61 yards and a touchdown. And linebacker for the Cardinals, Kaiser White, who's had himself a pretty decent season so far from what I've been seeing, had 14 tackles and 1 interception against those Cowboys on Sunday. Excellent job for the Arizona Cardinals. I don't think this really changes a whole lot in terms of the forecast or projection for the Cardinals season this year. I do still think that they will be towards the bottom of the league at the end of it. But, the Dallas Cowboys potentially looked over those Cardinals, and the Cardinals proved, yet again, like we've seen time and time in this NFL, you cannot overlook an opponent regardless of, the talent or roster or how good you think or how bad you think they are going to be. Heading down to the defending Super Bowl champs, starting to look like themselves again. And Kansas City Chiefs beat the Chicago Bears 41-10. The Bears, they've had a rough week with, speculation or, raids going on in ownership and coaching households, as well as the stadium being broken into and having $100,000 plus of, groundskeeping, lawnmowers, gators, things like that being stolen straight out of Soldier Field. And then now another loss for those Chicago Bears. Justin Fields struggled yet again. 11 for 22, 99 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 interception through the air, as well as 11 carries for 47 yards. But those Kansas City Chiefs starting to turn things around and kind of look like their old selves. Patrick Mahomes, 24 for 33, 272 yards, 3 touchdowns, no picks. Running back Isaiah Pacheco had 62 yards and a touchdown. Running back Clyde Edwards-Helaire, 55 yards and a touchdown. Travis Kelce had 7 receptions for 69 yards and 1 touchdown. And we're going to focus on the numbers and football, unlike the rest of the media who is talking about Taylor Swift more than, the Chiefs and the NFL this week. So, moving on to the Steelers and the Raiders. The Steelers came out on top of that one. Sunday Night Football, I believe, 23-18. The Raiders, Jimmy Garoppolo continued to struggle, kind of. Not really sure what to make of Jimmy Garoppolo. It's kind of, the yin and the yang. You kind of get the good, but you get the bad. 28 for 44, 324 yards, 2 touchdowns, 3 interceptions against the Steelers. I'm sorry. Josh Jacobs started to kind of return to form. 17 carries for 62 yards, as well as 3 receptions for 18 yards. And Davante Adams balled out as usual. Wasn't quite enough to will his team to a victory, but he did everything he could. 13 receptions, 172 yards, and 2 touchdowns on the night. Outstanding performance by Davante Adams, which is why he's one of the top 3 wide receivers in the NFL. For those Steelers, though, quarterback Kenny Pickett, 16 for 28, 235 yards, and 2 touchdowns, no interceptions. And wide receiver George Pickens had 4 catches for 75 yards. And then wide receiver Calvin Austin had 2 receptions for 72 yards and a touchdown. That touchdown was 72 yards long. And then on defense, cornerback for the Steelers, Levi Wallace had a nice game, coming up with 2 interceptions to go along with his 6 tackles. And now heading over to the first of the 2 for the doubleheader Monday night football. The Eagles took down the Buccaneers 25-11. Baker Mayfield went 15 for 25 with 146 yards, touchdown, and 1 interception. Mike Evans had 5 catches for 60 yards and a touchdown. Where the Tampa Bay really struggled was they only had 41 rushing yards. I've said it before. I'm going to say it again. I said it yesterday on my Ravens episode. Go check that one out. I said it earlier in this episode when talking about the Los Angeles Chargers. You need to have somewhat of a rushing game. 41 yards is not enough, to not corner your offensive play calling, and kind of, take any kind of advantage you might have away from your offense there. Those Eagles, though, solid defense. Looking at their offensive performers, Jalen Hurts went 23 for 37, 277 yards, 1 touchdown, 2 interceptions, though. And then DeAndre Swift, 16 carries for 130 yards, no touchdowns. Another solid performance from DeAndre Swift, who is very close to leading the league in rushing yards now after only receiving 1 carry in week 1. And then wide receiver A.J. Brown had 9 receptions for 131 yards. He looked very, very good. Made a couple of contested catches that I saw. Looked good as usual. Now moving on to the final game of the week 3 with the second Monday Night Football game of the week. The Rams lost to the Bengals in Cincinnati 16-19. Matthew Stafford went 18 for 33, 269 yards, a touchdown, and 2 picks. Wide receiver, rookie phenomenon, I guess many will say. Puka Nacua had 5 catches for 72 yards. Tight end Tyler Higbee, 5 catches for 71 yards. And wide receiver Tutu Atwell, 4 catches for 50 yards and a touchdown. Where the Rams struggled mightily was going 1 for 11 on third downs, not being able to extend the drive. A couple of miscommunications in terms of Stafford and where he wanted the receivers to go. A breakdown or two on pass protection, as well as just a couple plays that just came up short of the sticks for the Rams offense on Monday night. Joe Burrow, 26 for 49 completions, 259 yards, no touchdowns, 1 pick. Joe Mixon, 19 carries for 65 yards and a touchdown. He looked solid. He also had a catch for 8 yards coming out of the backfield. Then wide receiver Jamar Chase finally showed up to the 2023 season with 12 catches for 141 yards. No touchdowns for him. T. Higgins continued to struggle. I think he had 2 catches for 21 yards. I didn't write it down. But he had two drops that I saw live. Potentially had, another one. I didn't look for it, but 2 drops at the time I was watching. I was flipping back and forth between the 2 games. So T. Higgins still struggling, and he was kind of the second part to that Chase Higgins, top tier wide receiver duo, who both of them have been struggling. Chase looks like he might have, broken free from the struggles. We'll see how that continues. But Chase is going to, draw more coverage if T. Higgins is unable to perform like he has past, year and a half, 2 years. But then linebacker for the Bengals, Logan Wilson, had a nice game, had 2 interceptions on Monday night to go along with his 4 tackles against that Los Angeles Rams team. So that's the Week 3 recap. Now moving on to, just quickly, some top 3s in terms of, the major stat categories in the NFL. So we're going to start off with passing yards. In first, Kirk Cousins with 1,075, Tua with 1,024, and Justin Herbert with 939. Passing touchdowns, Kirk Cousins leads the league as well with 9. Tua is in second as well with 8. And then Jordan Love and Patrick Mahomes both have 7. Rushing yards, Christian McCaffrey leads with 353. DeAndre Swift, 308. James Cook, 267. Rushing touchdowns, Raheem Mostert, 6. Kenneth Walker, 4. Christian McCaffrey, Jalen Hurts, and Anthony Richardson all have 3. On the receiving side of things, yards, Justin Jefferson has 458. Tyreek Hill has 412. And Keenan Allen has 402. Receiving touchdowns, Tyreek Hill has 4. Mike Evans, Parham, Devontae Adams, and Romeo Doubs have 3 touchdowns apiece. On the defensive side of the ball, Zaire Franklin has 45 tackles. TJ Edwards has 42. And Jaguars defender, I'm not going to try and pronounce his first name, but Olukon has 37 tackles. On the sack side of things, TJ Watt has 6, Daniel Hunter has 5, and Myles Garrett has 4.5. And then wrapping up for our top 3s for the major statistical categories. Interceptions, Jesse Bates has 3, Jordan Whitehead has 3, and 6 players currently have 2. Now, with that being said, that leads us into our him performance of the week. this week's Him Performance of the Week candidates, people that were in the discussion to potentially receive the Him for Week 3, Justin Herbert, Keenan Allen, Davon Achan, Raheem Mostert, Tua Tagovailoa, Kenneth Walker, and Devontae Adams. So those were the people in discussion. And this the Week 3 Him Performance of the Week goes to Devon Achan, Miami Dolphins running back, 18 carries for 203 yards and 2 rushing touchdowns, as well as 4 receptions for 30 yards and 2 receiving touchdowns. Incredible day for Devon. Incredible performance for him, for the entire Miami Dolphins offense. Congratulations on being Week 3's Him Performance of the Week. Now let's move over, transition to do a quick rundown on the Week 4 matchups. I will give a couple of thoughts just off the top of my head here. And then after that, I will get into my Week 4 picks. So please make sure you stay tuned to listen for those. Starting the Week 4 off is going to be Thursday Night Football, Lions at the Packers. This one, I'm very intrigued by this game. I think it's going to be very interesting to see, how this one develops, what team kind of shows if they can, kind of be dominating force for that NFC North. Right now, it's looking like it's going to be one of those two that's going to take the division. I project that regardless of the Thursday Night Football outcome, I do think the Lions will continue to, pull away, and I do still believe the Lions are going to win that division. But it's definitely interesting to see if the Packers can continue, exceeding my expectations of them, as well as to see if the Detroit Lions, it's kind of time to make sure, or solidify that they're still deserve to live up to the hype that they received this offseason. Obviously, they beat the Falcons pretty good, and they beat those Kansas City Chiefs. But then, in my opinion, lost to the Seattle Seahawks in a game that they should have taken care of business on. So it's going to be an interesting one. I think it'll be a good game down there, or up there in Green Bay. And then moving on to, we got London football this week. Falcons at Jaguars. Technically a home game for the Jaguars. If anyone can call London home, it's the Jaguars. I think they've played the most games there. That's going to be an interesting one. Jaguars have kind of been struggling. They just got blown out by the Texans. And then the Falcons, a lot of younger pieces, kind of going to see how they adapt to going overseas and how they can kind of hopefully improve on their last week's performance against those Detroit Lions. Then the Ravens take on the Browns in Cleveland this week. It's going to be a tough one, tough AFC North battle. I would predict. Cleveland defense, potentially the best defense in the league, especially after the Cowboys just put up a goose egg or a turd against the Cardinals offense. In the Ravens offense, they haven't fully been clicking yet. A lot of health concerns already for them. It's going to be a fight. Definitely going to be an interesting one. Hoping, go Ravens. Let's see how that one turns out. And then the Steelers take on the Texans. This one, we're going to see if C.J. Stroud, can continue to step up. He's been playing solid. I believe the Texans are 1-2. I believe they lost to the Colts. They lost to the Ravens. Yep, and they beat the Jags. So, Stroud has played well in all 3 of those games for a rookie quarterback. Kenny Pickett and the Steelers have kind of been iffy. That defense is starting to shape out well for the Steelers. We're going to see if maybe they can give Stroud some problems. We're going to see. And then the Rams head to Indianapolis to play the Colts. The Rams have played very well. I don't think their record shows for it, but the Los Angeles Rams have played very well with Matthew Stafford, who is definitely a big, swing, a big, factor in terms of, what that Rams team is able to do. So we'll get that one. Then the Vikings take on the Panthers in Carolina. The Vikings are still looking for their first win, which, I'm a believer that the Vikings record last season in 2022 was better than, the team was. The Vikings record was better than what they should have, been in their wins. But this year, I would not expect them to start the season 0-3 like they are right now. So I would definitely think Minnesota Vikings are going to be, pretty focused, have a pretty big chip on their shoulder, and kind of, in terms of turning their season around and having a playoff shot for the 2023 playoffs, that's got to start now if you're the Minnesota Vikings. Be interesting to see if it's going to be Andy Dalton under center again, or if Bryce Young will be healthy enough to play in that matchup. The Buccaneers take on the Saints in New Orleans. Both of these teams lost the game this weekend, week 3, previous week. Buccaneers have looked solid, didn't play horrible against the Eagles, who are, struggling, but still probably one of the top 3 or 4 teams in the NFC there, as well as the Saints. My guess is Jameis Winston will be the starting quarterback. And, he is very, very hit or miss. I would hope that, Jameis Winston would, rely on Chris Olave and Raheem Shaheed if he is, in fact, starting for them. They've both been very dynamic playmakers so far, and I think provide that Saints team with their best possibility of winning. The Commanders head up to Philly to play those Eagles. This one, Commanders just got stomped out of their own stadium by the Buffalo Bills. Now have to go play a very good divisional opponent. I do think it would be very tough sledding for the Commanders. The Eagles have struggled. This potentially could be, the game that they kind of turn things around, start clicking some things there. So if the Eagles put up, a 20-point win, I would not be too shocked. I do not think their defense is going to have the kind of performance the Bills just did. I don't think the Commanders' offensive line or Sam Howell is going to, allow that kind of thing to happen 2 weeks in a row. The Dolphins head to Buffalo to play the Bills. I think this is going to be one of the better games of the week. That Miami Dolphins offense coming off a 70-point performance, absolutely incredible. And the Buffalo Bills just had 9 sacks and 4 interceptions. It's going to be a very good offense versus a defense that just had a very good performance. It's going to be fun to watch, I think, and could turn into a shootout between Tua and Josh Allen. We'll see if Jalen Waddle, I think he should be good to go. He missed last week with a concussion. Most of the time, it's going to be a 1 week game absence. So, they put up 70 without Waddle. Obviously, their game plan changes with Waddle in it, but that's going to be a good one, I believe. And the Bengals are going to play the Titans this week in Tennessee. Burrow dealing with some health injuries. That offense is still struggling. Still is not looking like the explosiveness that we've come to know from the Cincinnati Bengals. And part of that is kind of, those defenses playing a deep cover 2 shell against the Bengals and kind of just letting them take the unders rather than, potentially losing an explosive play over the top or down a seam to Jamar Chase or T. Higgins. The Titans, though, they have been struggling on offense. Ryan Tannehill, if he starts out having a bad game again, against a team that's 1-2, the Titans might feel like they got a chance to win and may make a switch at quarterback during this game. I wouldn't be surprised to see it. Derrick Henry, I would predict to have more than 20 yards, but we'll see how that goes. And the Broncos take on the Bears. This one is going to be something else. The Broncos just lost by 50. The Bears just lost by 31. Next game. The Raiders head to LA to play the Chargers. Another good divisional game, I think. The Chargers, I'm not sure Austin Eckler's status for this week, but they could potentially be without now two major weapons in Mike Williams and Austin Eckler. While the Raiders, they've kind of been struggling. Devontae Adams is doing everything he can. Garoppolo's been struggling with, interceptions already. If Garoppolo can protect the football, he may be able to, go at that Chargers defense a little more that has been struggling. The Chargers defense has allowed quite a few points so far this season. Patriots take on the Cowboys in Dallas. Patriots, Bill Belichick, I would assume, is going to have a good game plan against the Cowboys. I do think this will be a closer matchup than what some people may think. So we'll kind of see who comes out on top. I do think that Cowboys defense is going to play much better than they did against the Arizona Cardinals in that kind of embarrassing effort, lining up so many chunk plays, 9 plus yards, And then the Cardinals take on the 49ers. Brock Purdy just had his best game of the season. The Cardinals just came off a major upset win against those Cowboys, like I just mentioned. We'll see if the Cardinals can kind of ride that wave, ride that energy, and sneak out another huge upset in a divisional game. That would be huge for them, regardless of, how their season's going to plan out. But that would be a huge shakeup. We'll see how that one. And then Sunday Night Football, not the matchup we originally thought it was going to be, but we have the Kansas City Chiefs in New York to face the Jets. Zach Wilson, they said they're riding it out with him this week. I don't know, man. They need to have some sort of game plan to get around that. They need to score some points because the Chiefs are definitely going to. The Jets' defense has been solid, but I don't think it's enough to, slow Mahomes down enough when you have Zach Wilson on the other side of the ball. If Zach Wilson's only going to be getting you 10 points of production on offense, I have confidence Mahomes is going to score more than 10 points every single week of the season. And then Monday Night Football, just one game this week. I think we have one game on Monday nights for quite a while. I think the last doubleheader is either week 14 or 15, somewhere back later in the season there. We have the Seahawks in New York against the Giants. So another, Sunday night, Monday night, back-to-back for MetLife Stadium. We're hoping for, or at least New York and MetLife is hoping for better results than they saw the first time. But the Seattle Seahawks, their offense is starting to kind of click a little bit. Geno Smith looks all right. The Giants team is struggling. They struggle pretty bad without Saquon Barkley. I predict he will miss this week as well. I think he was slated to miss 2 or 3 weeks, so it wouldn't come as a surprise. But he's definitely a huge part of their offense, and the Giants, I think, are going to be missing him against the Seattle Seahawks. So that's a quick preview on the Week 4 matchups. The only thing left for this episode is for me to give my Week 4 picks. Last week, Week 3 of the 2023 season, my picks were 10-6. So far on this season, I am 30-18 in predicting the winner of the games correctly. And now here's my picks for Week 4 around the NFL. I'm taking Lions over Packers, Jaguars over Falcons, Ravens over Browns, Texans over Steelers, Rams over Colts, Vikings over Panthers, Bucks over Saints, Eagles over Commanders, Dolphins over the Bills, Bengals over the Titans, Broncos over the Bears, Chargers over the Raiders, Cowboys over the Patriots, 49ers over the Cardinals, Chiefs over the Jets, and the Seahawks over the Giants. That's all I have for the this episode. thank you all so much for listening. If you've made it this far, please press that follow button. I greatly appreciate it. As well as check out the Instagram at Wedge52Gridiron. There you can see when all the newest podcasts release, as well as a couple of other things that I post throughout the week. Thanks again for listening. Go Ravens.